So, but basically the goal here is to educate the crowd out there, especially small to mid-sized companies who are starting to build a leadership team for the first time. And this, and we encountered a lot of these types of companies here at Stand Advisors, where we are all about helping them build their first leadership team. And there are 3 questions that come up all the time in our early discussions with companies. And our goal today is to go over these 3 questions between myself and Rob. And the first one I have for you, Rob, which is, how do I pick who to invite to the leadership team? So I'm a small, mid-sized business. I'm growing. It's time to build that team. It's time to elevate people up. How do I pick who should be joining me?
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pascal. Well, I will make only a couple of assumptions. And the first assumption is you're already past that first phase. It's not like you're looking for your first sale. So you're not a startup. You're now, you've got a platform, you're selling, you're creating expectations, delivering on them, but you now realize, you know what, I want to get to the next level. And that next level is still pretty early in the entrepreneurial journey. So typically what we do is we look around. We look around at who's there right now. And we do this, and it's by design. We say, well, that person, they really helped me right away. They really understand the market. Probably they can lead sales. I think I want to bring them on. And I may look at it and say, you know what, I've been doing operations, but I may have to go and get somebody who has a lot more depth than I have. Like I'm up here, but I need to have somebody up here because I've got to lead as the president. So we typically start that way by just taking a look at the landscape of what our needs are based on the marketplace. Second thing is, we want to look at functions that are going to drive the business. So sales, operations, getting the sale, delivering on the promise, replicating that, and then hopefully, of course, as you grow, I don't want to add more complexity, but we have to understand complexity so that we can actually adapt to it. So you want to make sure those functional leaders, sales and ops, are with you. It's very possible you yourself might have been the head of ops, as I said, or head of sales, and you've got to pivot a little bit to bring somebody else in. So typically, we're gonna first fill that team with functional leaders, and as we grow, there's a couple of other, we call them support systems, support staff, that when we do grow, they find a place at the leadership team level, IT, HR, quality, finance, and at the very least, even if they're not sitting at the leadership level, we need to have capable people as we start to grow who have your ear as the president. You don't want to just leave them out there. You want to know that they're adding value and that they're getting insights from you as well.
Absolutely. Great insights there. And so let's walk that through. So how should people best onboard new leadership team members? So whether you're spinning up a team for the first time, or you've invited a few, maybe ops and sales, and then you're looking to expand. So how to best onboard someone new to leadership team. So most specifically, someone from your team that doesn't necessarily have leadership team experience that you're bringing up, versus, of course, bringing someone from the outside where maybe he or she has already had experience, but onboarding someone where this is their first time on the leadership team. What steps would you take for that one?
Great question. There are several ways that we approach it. And the first thing is, again, it's a needs assessment. Before we look at what that person has, let's look at what we need. So that person might be a great salesperson, and they might have been early on in their stages of management, and we're seeing something in them. We're seeing the ability for them to hire other salespeople. They've got some skill sets there. They're pretty good communicators. They know how to bring a plan to action, and not just them doing the sales. So we want to make sure, what are the needs that we're trying to get done? The second thing, of course, is as you start to build those needs and you understand what they are, then you've got to ask yourself, okay, well, does this person possess the capabilities that those needs are asking for? So we can call it a gap analysis. It's an opportunity, certainly. And I would say also, very small businesses, we ourselves might not even know all of the capabilities that we need from ourselves or from somebody else. So not a bad idea to look for third parties and ask those questions too, like, what do you see in me that might be really helpful to a team, but also might be a blind spot of mine? I think that's really healthy for a leader to do that, because you don't want to play on your blind spots. You don't want them to be the decision-making body. You want to have an open opportunity to think through things. Of course, you want to hear from the person that you're looking at and contemplating, and determine from them, is this what they want to do? Do they want to take that level of management and leadership? And we typically think, well, they must, because that's the next step. But we're all individuals. And some of us are very, very happy doing what we do really well. And it might not be at a management level, but we're super good at it. So we shouldn't make assumptions that just because you're here and you're with me, ought to be your next level. Let's have that conversation. Of course, the last step then, once we know we've looked at the capabilities, the person is in, then we start to build a plan. And we build a plan based on development. So some of that development, that person is expected to do on their own. We all are. Every one of us is expected to do some of that. Some of it we should be doing as the company owners. We should be allowing the opportunity for that person. It could be through online learning courses. It could be through bringing them into new decisions you never would have before. You're opening the books more to them. So we never really contest somebody unless we really show them more. We just assume sometimes, well, they ought to be able to make the jump. Let's be really open about what we want to show them to be able to bring them to the next level.
I think let's unpack. You had so much good stuff to share there. I will admit that I've made a mistake years ago in one of my first businesses of assuming someone that I knew would have been quite good. And when I asked him the question, he said, I actually don't want anything higher than now. I love where you're at. So that kind of blew up the plans from that perspective. So I think that's a good one. The key is also, again, like you said, the understanding where we're all at. And when it is your first leadership team, we probably still have functional roles. It's expectations of, just because we're here now, we're still a small business. There's still stuff to do. We're just basically inviting them to help us start analyzing and making better decisions. And to be able to do that, I think you have a great quote in one of your talks, which is, don't delegate without authority, right? In other words, I'm inviting you up, but if I'm not seeking your input, if I'm not giving you the resources, if I'm not being transparent with you, it's going to be really hard for that person to help you from that perspective. So anything else, like how does someone, is it a mindset thing from an entrepreneur? Like you've built it up on your own, you've had the pressure on your own, now you're starting to, I guess, to look for support. So is it just a decision and a mindset, or are there things that an entrepreneur could practice or start to look at to really maximize that leadership team?
Great question also, because we do want to look at, when you first started the business as the entrepreneur, we probably know one thing: the culture of the business is you. Yeah. And typically, very small company, you own the culture. And as you start to grow, you bring in people and they have every right to say, hey, this is working and this is not, have you thought of this? And it's evolving. So when you're bringing somebody into that leadership level, even if you trust them at the level where they're at, but remember, they're going to have a larger impact, not just on their function like sales or marketing or ops, but also on who they bring in. They're going to have a larger footprint in the organization. Do they match my values? Do we have an alignment on where we want to go with our culture? It's very possible. This is often the time when leaders now take a step back and go, okay, I got to clarify my mission, because other people now, they're expecting me, first of all, they want to make a career. So they're expecting me to bring some big heavy lifting to the table. The vision is owned by the leader. The core values or culture, I like to say, it's owned by the president, but operated by the employees. So we have to make sure we've got the right, like, do they fit what I'm expecting? And that's one I think we often hire or we bring in people on aptitude, and we don't often consider the attitudinal aspect, which is so huge. So you got to make sure, I believe, you got to make sure they don't have to be like you. As a matter of fact, diversity is phenomenal in thinking, but core values, the value systems need to be aligned. It's so important.
So you may have already answered these in certain ways, but I'm going to challenge you to highlight the three biggest mistakes you see a leader make when he or she is developing the leadership team for the first time. So the top three mistakes.
Top three. So you mentioned, well, you kind of mentioned one, but you caught yourself, and I caught myself too, in that I'll spend a lot of time in my head thinking, oh, this is the organization. it's small. These are the people I have in place, and they're just going to follow me naturally to the next step until we find out maybe somebody doesn't want to go. So we have to do a lot of check-in and communication, two-way. That mistake you and I both made was one-way communication. We just assumed. I've been there a lot. That's one mistake. Let's and share the vision. So people who may have actually been in before now, you know what? I'm still with you. I want to make sure they're not here for 6 months or a year and then they want to move on. They're here for the first phase or the next phase. The second one is, even if the vision is clear and they want to do this, I found out, and I'm sure you have too, Pascal, the criticality of bringing people in who I know can help build the business from here to here. If you're a $5 million business, it's possible the people who bring it to 10 or 20 may not bring it to 100, including ourselves. Like, we have to go back to school. We hire professional managers in certain things. So we have to have that thought process. At what level do I believe this person could bring the business with me to? Can they bring me from, if they could bring me from 4 to 5 million and that's it, probably not a very good choice. Because you're going to get to 5 million, maybe kicking and screaming. We have to do this as a proper leap. So that's the second one. Where do I believe they can take me? And then, of course, the development comes in. And the third one is one I did mention earlier: align on the values, align on how they are, how they interact in the culture, how they're going to bring opportunities for development of leaders and so forth. Even in small businesses, we're still building leaders at different levels, people who are influential, who know how to make decisions and want to. Though, to me, that's a really critical aspect. I don't want to position somebody that is really only worried about their own turf. They're too worried about political issues that they either create or believe they have to navigate and manage. Not really a successful way to lead a company. So I really do want to look at what's their value system.
So my last question here, and look, it's one that we don't want to think about because we don't think that it's going to happen, but we know it doesn't matter if we bring the right people, we invest in them.
Yes.
We think we've done all the right things. Sometimes it doesn't work out, right? Sometimes that person just can't keep up with the rest of the team, or really from a values perspective, or just literally cannot keep up for multiple reasons. That's not necessarily our fault. That's why we're highlighting the top 3 mistakes, because if we're doing the right things, if that person doesn't work out, how do we offboard someone? Is it once they get elevated, there's no way they can stay? It's like, in other words, it's up or out, or is there a way to keep a high performer in a company, even though he or she may not be leadership material? So maybe some insights there, because I know this stresses out a lot of people.
I've had experiences in two different streams, one of which we probably all know more than the other, and that is, we brought somebody in. They're in a position of authority. Maybe they're on the leadership team already, and they're just not the right fit for the culture of the company, and we're not gonna keep them in the company. In my 2 examples, that's the easier of the 2. I'm not suggesting it's easy. There's a lot you have to explain to people if they were brought in as a leader, including that person, why it didn't work. So let's just put that under, it didn't work out and the person's going to have to leave. The second one's trickier, and I've had a couple of examples. I didn't have 20, but I've had more than one and you'd think you'd learn after one, but you know what? The learning curve is still slow on this one. And I say that very honestly, because what happens, or what does happen, I think, is when you first recognize that somebody has a lot of great skill sets, but they're not working, and I look at it as they're not working at the strategic level. They're still in their function in mindset. So they may bring a ton of knowledge about marketing or ops or sales or finance, but they can't bring the team to the next level because they themselves can't, they're tactical thinkers. And that's okay, but it's not very healthy or helpful at a leadership level. And so the first thing is the acknowledgement or the awareness, and typically other leaders might start to say something. I'd like to believe, or I hope, we the owners spot it first. It's not a hard and fast true thing in life, but you want to know that you can spot basically where people are struggling, where they're just not, it's not in their area. And if you believe they're not going to make it to the next level of working across the company at that strategic level, but you want to keep them, it's a delicate conversation, because now we want them to stay in the company, we value them, but now they have to save face. You have to explain really why I think you're really good at this, but somehow you're not strong enough to work at that leadership level. There is a lot of very delicate issues here. And I won't say it's easy, but I do believe if you are transparent and honest about what it is you're seeing, and you believe you can't close the gap with them, and that is to say, look, I don't see you working at this level, and this is why, and the why is the most critical part, then I think at the very least, however this plays out, it's important to realize you're using the openness and honesty that you have to use to make sure the person lands. They're going to be making a decision too. If you want to keep them, they might be deciding, you know what, not sure I feel as welcome here. Not sure I want to deal with perhaps some of the bruising of an ego. So start with the openness, and give them space to think about it. I wouldn't say, and you got 24 hours to decide this, give them time to come back and probably have a second conversation. In other words, did you really, when you said this, did you really mean that? Because they might be incredibly surprised. This is one of the strongest feedback loops you're ever going to have. And so there's no magic to it, but I do believe the transparency and honesty. I did have, as I said, this has happened a few times. In the cases, the people did stay, but not without tough conversations, and not just one. So it was a good learning for myself. And I guess the ultimate learning is do our homework on the early phases, but their ability to be at that level.
Absolutely. Well, these were great tips for everyone. Again, if we want to scale our businesses, we know we need a great team, and that can only happen if we start delegating leadership and delegating decision making, which is why that first leadership team is so important to that next leveling up for any business. So Rob, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you for having me, Pascal. See you.